What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. On tonight's episode, we got a bunch of stuff going on. We have the Steven Adams trade that just went down, Russell Westbrook reaching 25,000 points, Joel Embiid injury news, LeBron's return to the Garden, some of the top college games of the week, some of the new storylines going on in college basketball, and so much more. So once again, make sure you like and subscribe to Empty the Bench. We also have a partnership now with WolfSpreads. Make sure to download WolfSpreads, the app that you can bet live with your friends. Don't have to use your own money. You get just for fun, practically. Place down whatever bets, whatever parlays you want on WolfSpreads. We're going to be doing a partnership with them, so they'll be all across the Empty the Bench Podcast Network in a variety of different ways. So everybody stay tuned with that. That's going to be a lot of fun going forward. So jumping right into things, one of the big trades that happened this week, Memphis Grizzlies trade Steven Adams to the Houston Rockets. So this was a little bit of an interesting move that kind of came a little bit as a surprise. The Grizzlies ended up acquiring Victor Oladipo and 3 second-round picks in exchange for Steven Adams. So the Rockets, this was a trade that at first glance I honestly thought was just kind of made no sense and was kind of like a weird move for both teams because both teams are kind of going sideways. I mean, the Grizzlies probably going to end up getting a lottery pick this year. The Rockets are trying to sneak into the playoffs. They have a good young team, and they're trying to acquire some veteran depth. But looking deeper into this, it does make a lot of sense. Steven Adams is owed $12.4 million next year, which the Grizzlies now can get off the books, and it frees up some money for them to sign their lottery pick. They're going to end up getting a top 10 pick this year, possibly sign a free agent or two, and build around Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and John Morant for the future, pretty much. So they're able to get out of Steven Adams' contract. And for the Rockets, on the other hand, they're able to add a good veteran, too. The Rockets will have a good young team. They've got a few players who are developing into very solid players, and they're not doing terrible in the West. Right now, they're in the play-in tournament picture. So they were looking to add a veteran going forward. Steven Adams, obviously, though, has been out the entire year. He's going to miss the entire season with an injury, so he's not going to be back for this year. This is more for next year for the Rockets to have a big man, to have a veteran present, so they can compete again next year. And Victor Oladipo was kind of just a throw-in to match the contracts, getting paid like a decent amount of money, but he was on the Houston Rockets start the year. He was traded a couple times this past summer, and he ends up going to the Grizzlies, where he still has no timetable to return. They're still not exactly sure what the extent of his injury is and all that kind of stuff, but Oladipo does now have the option to play for the Grizzlies, and he's on an expiring contract, so he'll become a free agent this summer anyway. So it's really a win-win situation for both teams. The Grizzlies shed some money, the Houston Rockets add a good veteran for next year, and they're able to compete. So I think that this ended up being a pretty solid move for both teams. So the Grizzlies ended up adding Steven Adams. They basically are waving the white flag. They've got 7 guys that are hurt right now. They had to, the NBA had to step in and give them an exception to have more roster spots and be able to sign more 10-day contracts with the amount of players that they have hurt right now. So that is big news for the Grizzlies. Jumping over from that, Russell Westbrook becomes the 25th player in NBA history to score 25,000 career points. So Westbrook this past weekend made a milestone that very few have. He's now 25th all time in scoring in NBA history. He's the 25th player to reach 25,000 career points. Right now, he's currently sitting right behind Jerry West, who's at 24 with 25,192, and Reggie Miller, who's at 23 with 25,279. So he's in spitting distance of both of those guys to possibly jump over both of those guys this season. It's a very interesting thing because we all look at Russell Westbrook now as pretty much a shell of his former self, not a star. One of the better bench players in the NBA, but nothing really more than a bench player, not really even a starter anymore in the NBA. But he ended up reaching 25,000 points. So it goes to show you the kind of career he's had, that we kind of write off to a degree. And we tend to forget about how good he was in OKC, and how dominant he was playing with Kevin Durant and then playing those couple of years as the star, and winning MVP as well. So he reached 25,000 career points. And his teammate James Harden on the Clippers is, um, also reached 25,000 points, a little bit more recently. He's sitting he's 22 all time in scoring with 25,404. So the two of them are neck and neck. They've had very similar careers. I think that they both are in the trajectory of being right around each other on an all-time NBA list. That's definitely where I have them in my top 50, right next to each other, basically. They've had very similar careers. Both won MVPs. Both were did great as star players for their teams, but didn't end up having the playoff stats to go along with it, and the playoff success to go along with it as well. So this was very, very cool news for Westbrook, and for the Los Angeles Clippers, as he was able to reach 25,000 points. And then some of the biggest news, though, that's been going on in the league, the Philadelphia 76ers, who currently sit third in the Eastern Conference right now. Their star player, last year's MVP, Joel Embiid, suffered a torn meniscus, and right now he's weighing options. So the MVP from last year, he's weighing options whether to rehab it or to decide to have surgery, and it'll practically shut him down for the rest of the season. And the 76ers have not played great without Embiid this season. They can definitely still stay in the mix, but this is a huge blow for the 76ers, and it really takes them out of the Eastern Conference race, to be honest with you, with how hot the Knicks have been, and the Cavaliers have been, which we'll go over in a few. And then you have the Bucks and the Celtics right at the top of the division. Those four teams have been dominant, and they've been a lot better than the 76ers that even played this season. And Embiid is by far the star player of the 76ers. He's the heart and soul of them. So this is a huge blow for sure for them to lose Joel Embiid for however long he's going to be out for. It'll be interesting to see if he decides to go with the surgery and what that surgery means too. Does he miss a portion of next season? But as he's sitting out right now, he's probably number one on most people's MVP ladder. If they were to rank who most likely will win MVP this season, he's probably number one, but he's quickly approaching the 65 game minimum. And that's become a topic of discussion all over the NBA this year. Adam Silver, before the season, put in a mandate of players having to play at least 65 games during the season to be eligible for off-season awards, such as MVP, such as most improved player, all that kind of stuff. And he is quickly approaching that 65 game minimum. He will most likely not be able to reach the 65 games, even if he comes back somewhat soon, which means that he probably won't be eligible to win a back-to-back MVP, even though he by far is the favorite to win MVP. But then again, if he ends up, missing another couple of weeks or something like that, that probably would have taken him out of the race anyway. There's a lot of people who dislike that rule. 65 game minimum means you miss 17 games during a season. I think it's a fantastic rule. I think that it gives a lot of these guys more of an incentive to play the majority of games. I mean, we have by far been seeing with all of, Adam Silver gets a lot of pretty much discussed about a lot of the decisions that he ends up making, but a couple of the things that he's put into play to try to limit the resting of players during the regular season has come back to do well. I mean, Kawhi Leonard has played practically the entire season. Same with Paul George. Those are two guys who are notorious for taking time off for resting and not necessarily injuries. So they have honestly, a lot of the stuff that he's put into play has come back and done well for him to get these guys to actually play this season. So it's definitely very interesting. I think Embiid is probably not going to hit that 65 game minimum and probably won't be eligible for MVP. But the bigger question is how much time will he miss, and will the 76ers suffer big time from that, which I think is going to be the case. So this is kind of something that we just kind of have to wait and see. I mean, this is the season for the Sixers right now. If Embiid, also the question is if Embiid plays too, how effective will he be? Will he noticeably be injured? Will it affect his numbers, his productivity? That's all remains to be seen. And then some more news: LeBron James been obviously with this being his age 39 season, he's been in the news all year long anyway. But there's been some interesting stuff that's gone on this week with LeBron. So he returned to the Garden for the first time this season to take on the Knicks, and obviously anytime LeBron plays at the Garden, it's going to be big news. But right before that, he posted a mysterious hourglass tweet in wake of the reports that the Lakers may trade him. So there's a rumor that was going around that the Lakers may actually look to trade LeBron and or Anthony Davis at the deadline to try to basically kickstart their future without the two of them. They don't know if LeBron can opt out of his contract and become a free agent this offseason and go somewhere else. So there's a lot of speculation that he's going to do that he's not going to return to the Lakers after this season. So there's a lot of rumors that the Lakers might step in and be like, all right, let's get a big package for the two of you guys, and we'll kickstart our future without you guys. We don't see us winning a championship this year with the core that we have, so let's completely blow it up. So it makes a little bit of sense. It definitely makes a little bit of sense. Obviously, trading a LeBron James is crazy. I mean, LeBron obviously has never been traded in his career. He decides where he goes, and when you're a talent like LeBron James, that tends to be the case. And he's also got a no trade clause too, so it'd have to be something that he would accept as well. They wouldn't be able to just dump him to a random team. He'd have to be willing to leave the Lakers, and would also have to be willing to join the team that they want to trade him to. But he posted a weird hourglass tweet, which makes people think that he's leaving. Obviously, that's going to spark some speculation. His agent and best friend Rich Paul came out and shut down the reports that a trade is going to happen. So this basically only opens the question, is he opting out this offseason, and does he want to sign somewhere else? People started to ask him, what about the Knicks? If he becomes a free agent, and he did not shut it down. He basically complimented the Knicks and said that back in 2010, when he made his decision to go to Miami Heat, the Knicks were one of his top choices, and he really considered joining the Knicks. And he's thought about playing for the Knicks throughout his career. And he just left at that. But on top of that, he returned to the Garden. He scored 24 points and 5 assists on Saturday night in 40 minutes as the Lakers beat the Knicks 113-105, snapping the Knicks 9-game win streak that they had going. Obviously, the Knicks were shorthanded in that game. They had no Julius Randle, no OG Anunoby, and Quentin Grimes. So difficult for them to win regardless. But but then obviously the rumors started circulating with the tweet, and the Lakers right now are not doing good. They were able to beat the Knicks yesterday, but they're sitting at 26-25 on the season. They're 9th place in the Western Conference. So they're in the back end of the play-in tournament, and they only have a game and a half lead of falling completely out of the playoffs too. So things are quickly gearing up on them. I mean, we saw them in this mix last year. They made a ton of trades at the deadline and were able to spark a little bit of a run, making all the way to Western Conference Finals, but ended up losing to the Denver Nuggets. Ended up getting destroyed by the Denver Nuggets, I should say. So it'll make things interesting. And obviously, when LeBron returns back to the Garden, it's always going to be big news. But him going to the Knicks doesn't make any sense. I don't ever see that happening with the way that the Knicks trajectory is right now and the way that LeBron's trajectory is. I just don't see how you fit that in. And the Knicks also with LeBron at 39, I don't think are going to break the bank to trade for him. He's in the back end of his career. You've seen his numbers dip a little bit this season. He's still putting up pretty solid numbers, especially for a 39-year-old, but it's not the same productivity that we're used to with him. So does he still have a championship in him as the lead player? I'm not too sure. Jumping over from that, the Knicks and the Cavs. Speaking of the Knicks and the Cavs have stayed red hot. So the two hottest teams in basketball right now are the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers sit in third place in the Eastern Conference right now, as the Knicks sit in fourth place. The Knicks are 32-18 right now. They were on a 9-game win streak that got broken, obviously to their loss to the Lakers on Saturday, but they're 9-1 in their last 10 games because of it, and they're fourth in the Eastern Conference right now. They were third in the Eastern Conference for a short period of time as well. And the Cavs, on the other hand, are 31-16. They're half a game better than the Knicks right now. They're on a 5-game win streak, and they're 9-1 in their last 10 games, and they're sitting at third place in the Eastern Conference right now. So the Cavs have also been red hot, but the Knicks, on the other hand, have been absolutely crazy. They even without Julius Randle and OG Anunoby's missed the last 3 games. Randle's missed the last handful of games because of injuries. They've still been able to put together wins. They also haven't had Quentin Grimes as well. They'll be hoping. Anunoby is more day to day. He's got he has an elbow injury, but Julius Randle is the one that can make or break the season, because he's going to be reevaluating 2 to 3 weeks. We said last week, so it'll probably be 1 to 2 weeks now at this point after dislocating his shoulder. There was no structural damage, which was a good sign for him to return. But besides that, he has been a key piece to this team. I mean, Jalen Brunson obviously is the story, averaging 27.3 points a game, named an all-star, just having a complete surgence as becoming one of the best players in the NBA, even a top 10 player in the NBA, and being the star of this team. It's absolutely crazy what he's become. After, a lot of people gave the Knicks a lot of slack for signing him to the contract that they signed him to, and he's taken it in full stride. It's become a complete superstar. But Julius Randle being out, the Knicks are going to definitely compete for a while, even if Julius Randle remains out for several more weeks. It's going to be tough, though. I still think that as a Knicks fan, if Randle comes back soon and Anunoby gets healthy and Grimes gets healthy, I still think that they need one more piece. The one guy that I think that they could really benefit from is Malcolm Brogdon. And originally I was saying maybe trade Fournier in the 2nd round pick to the Trailblazers should be able to get it done. I mean, Brogdon's probably going to end up being one of the more highly sought-after players at the trade deadline, obviously, because he's playing for the Trailblazers right now, and he's got an expiring contract as well. So he's the perfect guy that the Trailblazers can trade and get something good for. So you're most likely going to have to give up a 1st-round pick. So Fournier in a 1st-round pick for Brogdon, I think that's something the Knicks not only should do, but will definitely highly consider. I would not be surprised with that. That's definitely a missing piece that they need, I think. So I think it will be very interesting to see how that's going to go. And then Darius Garland also just returned from injury for the Cleveland Cavaliers after missing a month and a half due to injury. And Evan Mobley also missed a lot of time due to injury, and they're still surging the way that they are. They've won. They're 9-1 their last 10 games. They're on a 5-game win streak right now. Donovan Mitchell has played absolutely incredible, averaging nearly 30 points a game. Jared Allen's averaging 15.5 and 10.7 rebounds. And Karis LeVert's been one of their unsung heroes coming off the bench this season, averaging 15.3 points a game off the bench after they re-signed him this offseason. So both the Knicks and the Cavs are red hot. They both have very similar teams, in my opinion. Brunson and Mitchell are both comparable all-stars and leaders of those teams, but they also don't have like the biggest names on the team. They have a very young team. Both teams are very young, and they just have a mixture of good players and are well coached, both teams. So that's kind of what we're seeing coming out of the Eastern Conference. You have the two powerhouses with the dynamic big threes in the Bucks and the Celtics, and then you have the Knicks and the Cavs, who just have overall structurally sound teams and have been able to make great runs throughout the season. So that's where the Knicks and the Cavs stand, both at the top of the Eastern Conference. So we'll see how they go from here. And jumping over from the NBA, we're going to jump into a little bit of college basketball. as this week was a monster week for college basketball, including probably the best day of college basketball we've had all season. This past Saturday was absolutely insane with the amount of games that we had. So some of the Saturday college basketball takeaways from this past weekend: UConn was able to beat St. John's at the Garden. They now moved to 10-1 in the Big East. They're still number one in the country, and right now, I mean, UConn, Purdue just beat Wisconsin on Sunday. So those two teams look like the teams to beat. They're going to be very, very difficult to beat. Either one of them. I truly think UConn has a legitimate chance of going back to back this year. They arguably have a better team this year than they did last year. And then Purdue, on the other hand, has just been completely dominant as well. And you always kind of breathe a little sigh and take it with a grain of salt whenever Purdue is doing well, because they haven't always been able to get it done in tournament time. But I feel like this team is different. Braden Smith has been completely dominant for them. And Zach Edey obviously can win it back-to-back, his second straight National Player of the Year. So that'll be interesting. And then a couple of other big games. Number 3 ranked UNC beat number 7 Duke, obviously in the North Carolina-Duke rivalry. So North Carolina ends up topping Duke, and North Carolina basically established themselves as the best team in the ACC. I don't think there's really any doubt about that. They should be undefeated. They should be 11-0 in ACC play if they didn't lose to Georgia Tech this past week. But so they'll fall a little bit from 3rd in the country, but Duke will also fall a little bit from 7th. So that was a big game. Kansas was also able to beat Houston, number 8 seed. Number 8 in the country, Kansas was able to beat number 4 Houston. Both teams now are 6-3 in Big 12 play. Both teams are at the top of the Big 12, as the most dominant. Tennessee also beat Kentucky, so Kentucky's been falling a little bit. They've put together a couple of bad losses in SEC play, games that they should have won. Tennessee was ranked 5th this week. Kentucky was ranked 10th. So Tennessee pretty much establishes themselves as the best team in the SEC, the team to beat after beating Kentucky. Baylor was also able to knock off Iowa State. Baylor had a couple of bad losses, fell to 18 this week, but they put together one really good win, beating 12 seed Iowa State. Utah State, the madness that is the Mountain West, just keeps getting more and more interesting. So as San Diego State beats number 17 ranked Utah State. This week we have 4 Mountain West teams that are ranked. Utah State at 17, New Mexico at 19, Colorado State at 24, at 23, and the other one that I'm missing one more who's at 24. We'll be going over that, though, very, very shortly when we go over the top college games of the week. But the Mountain West has been absolute madness this year, and San Diego State, coming off of their run to the Final Four last season, making it all the way to the national championship and losing to UConn. They started off the season ranked, but they kind of fell out of the rankings. And then Texas came together with a big win. Texas is one of the weirdest teams in the country right now. They put together some really, really bad losses and then put together some really good wins. They put together a good win on Saturday, being number 25 ranked TCU. And this could help Texas rejoin the top 25. Probably not going to happen since they're still under 500 in Big 12 play. But this was a very good win to get them back on track. They fell out of the top 25 this week, and they needed to put together some good wins to get themselves back on track, because they should be one of the better teams in the country. They have a fantastic roster, great backcourt with Max A. Smith and Tyrese Hunter. They got some good bigs with Dylan Mitchell, Dylan Dessau, and a few other guys. They have overall a very, very solid team. So that was a good win for them. So TCU will more than likely fall out of the top 25 this coming week. They're also another interesting team in there. They've been in and out of the top 25. They've practically been, every time they've been in the top 25, they've been 23, 24, 25, and then they lose and then fall out the next week. So that's been happening pretty routinely throughout the season. They're ranked 25 this week, and they ended up falling out. So those were some of the college basketball takeaways from a crazy day of college basketball on Saturday. A lot of games going on and a lot of interesting stuff that went down. So jumping into that, we're going to go over, as we do each week, the top college games of the week to get you ready for some of the best games that are going to be going down this week in college basketball. We're leading it off. We got Ole Miss at South Carolina Tuesday night at 6:30 on SEC Network. This is the only game that is unranked. I think South Carolina is going to be ranked, though, this week after putting together a couple of huge wins in their last 5 games. They've been playing absolutely great. I think they're going to jump into the top 25. Ole Miss had a bad loss this past weekend, so they're going to remain unranked probably, but this is going to be a really good game. Tuesday night at 6:30. Ole Miss right now is 18-4, 5-4 in conference play. They beat Mississippi State, but they lost to Auburn this week. Matthew Murrell has still been their leading scorer, 16.8 points, and Alan Flanagan's been great at 15.3. And then South Carolina jumps into it. This is the first time I think we're covering South Carolina on the show. They're 19-3 on the season. They're 7-2 now in conference play. They're on a 5-game win streak, and in that 5-game win streak, they beat both Tennessee and Kentucky, the 2 top 10 teams that are in the SEC. 2 huge wins. South Carolina was just out of the top 25 this week. I think that there's no doubt that they make it into the top 25 this upcoming week, and they probably will debut as a 21 or a 22 because of how impactful their past week has been. They've been an absolutely stellar team. Michi Johnson's been the leading scorer, averaging 14.9 points and 4.2 rebounds, and BJ Mack also averaging 13.8 points and 5.1 rebounds. And then we'll jump into a little bit of some A-10 basketball. We haven't covered too much of that this season. Number 21 ranked Dayton at St. Joseph's going down Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on CBS SN. On CBS Sports Network. Dayton's been fantastic this season. They're ranked 21st in the country this week. They've won 15 of their last 16 games. They're 18-3 to start the season. They're 18-3 on the season. They're 8-1 in conference play. Their only conference loss coming to Richmond last Saturday, which didn't really hurt their top 25 ranking with how good that they've been. And the story in Dayton has been Deron Holmes this entire season, the big man junior who has had an absolutely stellar season, should be an NBA draft pick this year, is a legitimate second-round talent. He's averaging 20 points and 7.8 rebounds. He's been great. And Anthony Grant has put together, once again, another great team at Dayton. Doesn't matter who's on their roster. They just get the most out of it. They're well coached. And they're going to be absolutely stellar. And then St. Joe's, on the other hand, has been good. They've been 15-7 total this season, 5-4 in conference play. Beat George Mason and LaSalle this week. Eric Reynolds is their leading scorer at 17.9 points. So I think this will be an interesting game. I mainly highlighted this game just to give Dayton a little bit of love because obviously in A-10 play, we haven't seen too much of them. And then Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, we also have number 22 BYU at number 23 Oklahoma. Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN+. Oklahoma will most likely be unranked this week after a couple of bad losses, but BYU should still be in the rankings. So right now, BYU is 22. They're 16-5 on the season, 4-4 in conference play. They only had one game this week. They beat West Virginia on Saturday, and Jackson Robinson's still been the leading scorer, 13.8 points. And then Oklahoma, on the other hand, has been falling. They were as high as right outside of the top 10 just a couple of weeks ago. Now they're down to 23 this week, and they're probably going to be unranked next week. They're 16-6 on the season now, and they're 4-5 in conference play. So they've not been doing well in Big 12 conference play. They've lost 3 of their last 4, including losing to UCF on Saturday. So that was a really bad loss for Oklahoma. McCollum's still been their leading scorer, and Otega Oweh has been averaging 13 points and 4.3 rebounds. So this will be an interesting game. This could be a huge win for Oklahoma to kind of get back on track. BYU is 4-4 in conference play. Oklahoma's 4-5. So this could definitely be a very, very big game. This is going to be a big game for both teams because BYU's got to keep the momentum going. They had almost an entire week off this past week before they had to play West Virginia. So this will be an interesting game for both of them. And then also Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, we got a big slate for Tuesday. Number 15, Texas Tech at number 18, Baylor. Tuesday night at 9 o'clock on ESPN. Texas Tech was on a surge for a little bit. They jumped in the top 25 rankings, and they went as high as 15 this week, but they lost 2 games this week. They're 16-5 on the season, 5-3 now in conference play. They lost to TCU and Cincinnati, so those 2 losses will be bad enough to get them, probably make them fall all the way to the bottom part of the top 25. They'll probably be somewhere in the 20s. This upcoming week, Pop Isaacs still averaging 17.6 points at 3.5 assists. Joe Toussaint, their grad senior, averaging 12.5 points and 4.2 assists. And then Baylor, on the other hand, fell all the way to 18 this week after a couple of bad losses, but they put together 2 very solid wins this week. They're 16-5 now in the season, also 5-3 in conference play, identical records to Texas Tech, but they were able to beat UCF and Iowa State. And the Iowa State win we went over a little while ago was a huge win. Iowa State ranked 12th this week, so that's going to help Baylor rise up the ranks again. They'll definitely be much higher in the rankings than Texas Tech this week. Jacoby Walter has still been one of the best freshmen in the nation. Eve Meese also been a dynamic freshman, averaging 10.2 points and 5.8 rebounds. And then some Mountain West love. We have Nevada at number 17, Utah State, going down Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Nevada has been very solid this season, 17-5 on the year, 4-4 in conference play. They beat San Jose State this past Friday, but Utah State has been ranked in the top 25 for the last several weeks. They're 19-3 on the season, 7-2 in conference play. They beat San Jose State, but they lost to San Diego State on Saturday. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how much that loss hurts them. San Jose State has not been great. Nevada beat them this week as well. But that loss to San Diego State is going to be interesting to see how much they fall from 17. Probably not that far, maybe like a couple of spots. San Diego State is still a pretty solid team, but that loss will definitely set them back a little bit. Nevada probably will still be unranked this past week, but I don't anticipate Utah State falling out of the top 25. They've been securely in the top 25 for the last 4 or 5 weeks now at this point, and they were as high as 17 now this week. So I think they may fall a couple of spots after that, but they're not going to fall out of it. And Great Osabor has still been one of the best transfers in the nation, averaging 19 points and 9.5 rebounds for Utah State. And then the sole game that we'll be highlighting for Wednesday, number 24, Alabama at number 16, Auburn, Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Obviously, anytime Alabama and Auburn play, it's going to be a big game. Doesn't matter if it's football or basketball. One of the biggest rivalries in college sports. Alabama's been 16-6 on the season. They just joined the top 25 after getting off to a little bit of a rough start. They're 8-1 though in conference play. They beat Georgia and Mississippi State this week, and they're now on a 4-game win streak. So they've been dominating in SEC play so far this year, and it helped them get to 24 in the country. And they're going to end up probably going even higher than that. Since they're 8-1 conference play, Mark Sears has been their star, averaging 20.1 points. Aaron Estrada has been a great transfer from Hofstra, averaging 12.9 points, 5.1 rebounds, 4 assists. And Grant Nelson averaging 12.1 points and 5.8 rebounds. And then Auburn fell a little bit this past week. They were rising. They were red hot and on a huge win streak, and then they put together 2 bad losses last week. They put together 2 solid wins though this week. They're 18-4 in the season now, 7-2 in conference play, but they beat Vanderbilt and Ole Miss this week. Janai Broom still averaging 15.7 points and 8.8 rebounds. And then jumping into the Saturday slate, we got a handful of really good games on Saturday. Number 25 TCU at number 12 Iowa State, 2 teams that definitely should be much lower, that should end up falling in the top 25 this week. TCU will probably be unranked, and Iowa State will not be number 12. They'll definitely be further down after losing to Baylor. This one will be Saturday at 2 o'clock. The channel is to be determined as of right now. There was no listed channel, but it's going to be on Saturday at 2 o'clock. In a game like this, you better believe will definitely be televised somewhere. TCU is 16-6 on the season now, 5-4 in conference play. They had a win and a loss this week. They beat Texas Tech, but they lost to Texas on Saturday. So Texas Tech, that was a really good win. The loss to Texas, though, was a pretty bad loss. So it'll be interesting. I mean, they had a good win and they had a bad loss. So do they stay in the top 25, or do they fall out of the top 25 because they're sitting at 25? I still think they're going to fall out after losing to Texas. But that Texas Tech win does keep them in the mix. And their big 3 has been great this year. Emmanuel Miller has been their leading scorer, averaging 16.4 points, 5.9 rebounds. Micah Peavy averaging 11.5 points, 4.9 rebounds, and the transfer from Delaware, Jameer Nelson Jr., averaging 11 points, 3 assists, and 2.3 steals as well. And then Iowa State's been great as well this year, 16-5 on the season, 5-3 in conference play. They only played 1 game this week. They lost to Baylor, so they'll definitely fall from 12 this week. Probably not too far because Baylor's ranked 18th this week. Baylor's a very good team, so they'll fall a couple of spots. in the top 25 this upcoming week, and they'll also be playing Texas on Tuesday. So they have a big matchup before they have to go play TCU. So this will be an interesting one in some Big 12 action. Jumping over from that, we got some Big 10 action. We got number 14 Illinois at Michigan State Saturday at 2:00 on CBS. If you looked at this game in the preseason, you probably had this circled on your calendar as one of the big games of the season. It's not really looking like that anymore. Michigan State was ranked a lot higher in the preseason rankings than they have been all year. They got off to a really bad start, but they're starting to come back a little bit. They're starting to put some stuff together. Illinois, on the other hand, 16-5 on the season, 7-3 in conference play. They beat Ohio State this week, and that's the only game that they played. Terrence Shannon Jr. is back after missing some time due to off-the-court issues, but Marcus Domask has been able to hold it down for them, averaging 15.5 points in his absence. It's amazing that Illinois has been able to stay as a consistent top 15 team, even without Terrence Shannon Jr., who seemed like, at the beginning of the season, seemed like he was the entire offense, averaging 20 points a game. He was dominating everything, but Marcus Domask has had a great year, was able to hold it down for a bit. Coleman Hawkins has also had a really good year. And then Michigan State, on the other hand, they're 14-8 now. They're 6-5 in conference play, so they're starting to rise up a little bit in conference play. They beat Michigan on Tuesday and beat St. Mary's on Saturday. Maryland on Saturday. So they had 2 wins this week. They'll also have a game before this. They'll be taking on Minnesota on Tuesdays, but that should be another win for Michigan State. Tyson Walker has had their dynamic season, 18.9 points, 3 assists. Malik Hall's averaging 11.6 points and 5 rebounds. And then jumping over from that, we have some ACC action. Number 3 ranked North Carolina at Miami Saturday at 4:00. Also not listed what network it's going to be on. North Carolina, after beating Duke this week, is definitely going to stay in the mix, but they also lost to Georgia Tech this week. So North Carolina is 17-4 on the season, 10-1 now in conference play. Could easily be 11-0, but they lost to Georgia Tech, was able to beat Duke, and they've won 11 of their last 12. They were on a big win streak before that. They'll also be taking on Clemson on Tuesday, which is not an easy matchup, so they got a game before this. So they have a chance to enter this game at 11-1. Armando Bacot has had a good season, averaging 14-10, but RJ Davis has been the star, one of the stars of college basketball, averaging 21.3 points a game for North Carolina. He's been absolutely stellar. And then Miami, on the other hand, has had a very interesting season after making it all the way to the Final Four last year. They came into this season with a lot more hype than they've been able to show. They're 15-7 on the year, 6-5 in conference play. They lost to NC State, but they beat Virginia Tech this past week. They're also taking on Virginia on Monday, which is going to be a really good game. Norchad Omier has been their star player, averaging 18-10. Matthew Cleveland averaging 15-6, and Wooga Poplar averaging 14.2 points and 5.1 rebounds. And then a very, very interesting non-conference game going on this late in the season. We have Gonzaga at number 10 Kentucky, which is going down Saturday at 4:00 on CBS. This matchup was supposed to happen last year, but the game got canceled, so they ended up pushing it off to this year. So this is going to be an interesting game. The Kentucky's got a little bit of a tough game in the midst of SEC play. Gonzaga, we haven't really been covering that much this year because they fell out of the top 25 and haven't been able to jump back in it. They haven't had a great season from their standards. They're 16-6 on the year, 7-2 in conference play. They beat Loyola Marymount this week, but they lost to St. Mary's. They play in the WCC, so if they're not winning, if they're not nearly undefeated, then it's not a good season for them. They'll also be taking on Portland on Wednesday, which should be a win. Graham Ike, who's their transfer from Wyoming, has been the leading scorer, averaging 15-7, and Anton Watson's also had another good year, averaging 14.5 points, 7.7 rebounds. And then Kentucky has been falling a little bit. Kentucky was ranked 10th in the nation this week. They're definitely going to fall a bit, though, after 2 losses. They probably should fall a decent amount of spots. They're 15-6 on the season now, 5-4 in conference play. They lost to Florida and Tennessee now. This week. They'll be taking on Vanderbilt on Tuesday, though, so that's a good game to get back into the action. But they're ranked 10th right now. They're definitely going to fall much further than that. Antonio Reeves has been one of the best players in the nation this year, averaging 19.5 points. And then their two potential lottery picks, Robert Dillingham, averaging 15.3 points, 3.9 assists, and Reed Shepherd, averaging 12.3 points and 2.3 steals, have been their star players. And then the final game of the week to look forward to, we have number 18 Baylor taking on number 8 Kansas. Saturday night at 6 o'clock on ESPN. So Baylor, we already went over. Baylor's got two big games this week. After putting together a good win against Iowa State, they'll be taking on Texas Tech and Kansas this week. And that's, the price you have to pay when you're playing the Big 12. It's a difficult schedule. You got some of the best teams in the nation in the Big 12. So Baylor at Kansas, this is going to be definitely a very, very tough road for Baylor to win. Kansas is ranked 8th in the country right now this week. They've been practically in the top 5 all season, but had some bad losses. They're 18-4 on the year, 6-3 in conference play, but they beat Oklahoma State and Houston this past week, and the Houston win was a big win. Houston's ranked 4th in the country. They'll probably move past Houston now as the highest ranked Big 12 team. They'll also be taking on Kansas State on Monday too, which is not going to be an easy game. And Kevin McCullough, been their leading scorer, still averaging 19.7 points. Hunter Dickinson averaging 19-11, and one of their most not so talked about guys who has been on a roll right now is Johnny Furphy, who's a freshman from Kansas. They've been inserting him into the starting lineup. He's become a sniper from 3 and has been jumping into some mock drafts. So he's a guy he's got to look after for Kansas as they take on Baylor. So that'll do it for another episode of the 3&D. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench podcast network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe and follow Empty the Bench at ETB Network. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the socials at the 3&D ETB. If you haven't already, we'll be putting out content all week in case you missed the entirety of the episode. Hope everyone has a great night, and make sure to like and subscribe once again to Empty the Bench on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.